Greetings. I am NKendall, a graduating senior from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm majoring in religion and philosophy with a minor in humanities. Today I will be speaking on the book Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston. I chose chapters 5, 8, 9, and 11 because I believe that they fully embody the strength of African people during slavery, losing their people without any promise of justice, and being set free on a foreign land without any help, all the while keeping their connection to their roots. Zora Neale Hurston was born on January 15th, 1891, and died January 28th, 1960. Both her parents and grandparents were enslaved, so she was a first-generation free African American. She came from a church family and grew up in Alabama, much like the main character, Cujo. Because Hurston came from a family of slaves, I'm sure that she was motivated to study them, and it must have been very overwhelming because she was able to speak to the last known slaves when she was the first generation free slave, so it came full circle. Throughout her life, she studied and promoted Black culture. She traveled to Jamaica and Haiti to study religions of the African diaspora, and she incorporated those things in her research, interviews, and findings, all into her works. She often celebrated the African culture of the rural South, and Alice Walker, the author of The Color Purple, wrote on her gravestone, Zora Neale Hurston, a genius of the South. Much like our studies in class, Barracoon exemplifies the drive of African people. They built up schools, homes, and churches, allowing people like us to have better opportunities. An example of this is Ida B. Wells, who we spoke about in class and watched a video on. She was an activist for anti-lynching, a journalist, and a teacher. There are also many negative ties to the story as well, such as child loss. Cujo's children were wrongly killed by whites and never saw justice, one by a gun and one by train, like Cujo when he was injured during a train accident and never saw the money from his case in court. Margaret Garner, who was also enslaved, promised that she would kill her children before she went back to slavery. So when she ran away with her family and they were caught, she stabbed her one daughter before they were able to capture them to keep her promise. These are just a couple ways that slavery impacted many lives. I enjoyed chapter 4 because of the detail when describing the deaths of Cujo's people. You can feel his anguish over his people's deaths and them being decapitated. You can also feel his complete fear when he tried to run away once his king was slaughtered. I also enjoyed the vernacular that was used to keep true to Cujo's character and background. For example, in chapter 8, Cujo says, "Therefore, we build the houses on the land we buy after we divide it up." These things could also be seen negatively, though, because it is harder for readers to understand with such a vernacular of the Africans. The way they say Africa, the way he says the people, the way he says land, these things can be seen as a disconnection instead of a connection, the way that I know that Hurston wanted it to come across. The use of two names in chapter 9 makes the story seem more authentic to African culture, because two names can be connected to the barrier between Africans and African Americans. In the past, we were all African American because we were the first ones to come to American land. But now, people are African and people are African American. There is a disconnection and a barrier between the two of us. But back then, they didn't have that because they had the two names, and we've lost that. Africans, even now, have a lot more pride, and in the story, they had more pride to them because even though they were no longer with their people in the story, they are still connected to their heritage and their past through the roots of the culture they took to them, even across the ocean. That is something that most of us have lost, and that whites are the reason for all of that. They created this naming system that wasn't needed and was only created because they didn't want to understand us. So they changed us and made our names part of the savage stereotype placed upon us. Hurston also brought the story full circle with the death of David by the train, because once again, Cujo was hurt by the train and never saw a day in court, so he didn't even feel the need to take David's case to court. She also took it full circle by ending chapter 12, calling it alone and leaving Cujo alone. Just like he entered America, he ended life in America alone. And took his first picture that he could have himself, took that on his family's graves. I feel like it's very impactful and important that he was also barefoot to stay connected to Africa. And that's what we are not, is connected to Africa. And Hurston put a lot of her time in this life studying the African people and trying to educate others of it to get that connection back, to mend that what was lost, to mend what was broken. This material is significant because it is our past. These people walked so we could run. They built the first churches, schools, and homes for us, and we're the first African Americans. Without knowing our past and their stories, we will continue to make the same mistakes. This is a book of dialogue and storytelling, not much narration, which gives us more of an in-person learning experience. Thank you. Once again, this is NKendall, a graduating senior from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, majoring in religion and philosophy with a minor in humanities.